Tom Bower has reignited one of the most controversial claims surrounding Meghan Markle, pointing to a past that insiders say was quietly known inside palace walls. Reports suggest private warnings may have circulated long before her royal wedding, raising questions about what was ignored and why. Now, new scrutiny is forcing old rumors back into the spotlight, with serious implications for the monarchy's credibility. If key figures truly knew, why stay silent? Stay with us, because this story may change everything. The story begins with a sudden shift in attention. Long-standing rumors, once pushed aside or quietly ignored, are now being pulled back into the spotlight. This time, they are not coming from unknown voices online. Instead, they are being revisited by investigative author Tom Bower, a figure known for examining the lives of powerful public personalities with detail and persistence. According to reports, these claims surrounding Meghan Markle were never entirely new. They had existed in fragments, spoken about in private circles, hinted at in certain articles, and sometimes referenced without clear evidence. For years, they remained on the edge of public discussion, never fully breaking through into the mainstream. But something has changed. Sources suggest that Bower's renewed focus has given these allegations a different level of attention. His work reportedly brings together timelines, past reports, and observations that attempt to connect pieces once seen as unrelated. What was once scattered now appears more organized, more deliberate. And that is where the tension begins to rise. Because when separate claims begin to form a pattern, people start to look closer. They start to ask questions that were not being asked before. And suddenly, a quiet narrative becomes a public conversation. But that's only part of the story. What makes this moment more intense is the timing. Insiders believe these discussions are resurfacing during a period when the royal family is already facing pressure from multiple directions. Reports indicate that public trust is more fragile than it has been in years, meaning even old rumors can carry new weight. This creates a powerful reaction. Some observers believe the renewed focus is an attempt to uncover overlooked truths. Others suggest it may be driven by ongoing tensions connected to Prince Harry and his departure from royal duties. The divide in public opinion only adds to the growing uncertainty. And this is where things take a deeper turn. Because the conversation is no longer just about what is being claimed. It is about what may have been known. If these rumors existed quietly for years, then it raises a serious possibility. Awareness may not have been limited to the public alone. What happened next raised even more questions. Attention begins to shift away from the claims themselves and toward those who might have encountered them earlier. Reports suggest that information of this nature, even if unconfirmed, often travels through private channels long before reaching wider audiences. So the focus changes. Instead of asking whether the allegations are true, people begin asking something else entirely. Were they ever noticed by those in positions of influence? And if so, what was done about them? This is where the story becomes more complex. Because if early warnings existed, even in informal ways, then it suggests a timeline that has not yet been fully explained. Insiders believe that understanding when these claims first surfaced, and who may have seen them, could reveal a very different version of events. And this is exactly where the uncertainty grows stronger. The deeper the story goes, the more it points toward unanswered questions rather than clear conclusions. Every detail seems to lead to another gap, another moment that feels just out of reach. Stay with us, because the next detail is critical. Because now, the focus is no longer just on the past itself, but on the possibility that parts of that past were quietly acknowledged long before the public ever became aware. And that leads to the question that changes everything. Who knew? As the story continues to unfold, attention shifts away from public claims and moves into a far more guarded space, the inner workings of the royal household. This is where decisions are made quietly, often shielded from public view, and where even small concerns can carry serious weight. According to sources, individuals entering the royal family at such a high level are typically subject to detailed background reviews. These are not simple checks. Reports indicate they involve gathering information from multiple channels, including media archives, private briefings, and sometimes discreet inquiries. The goal, insiders believe, is to identify any potential risk before it becomes a public issue. And this is where the situation becomes more complex. If such systems were in place, then it raises an unavoidable question: could these allegations have been noticed during that process? Sources suggest that palace advisors are trained to flag even unconfirmed concerns, especially if they could later affect the institution's reputation. Reports indicate that not every claim is treated equally, but patterns, repetition, or unusual attention can sometimes trigger internal discussions. But here's where the uncertainty begins. There is no confirmed public record detailing exactly what was reviewed or discussed at the time Meghan Markle was preparing to join the royal family. This silence leaves a gap, one that has now become the center of intense speculation. And that gap is raising more questions than answers. Some insiders believe that any claims, if considered weak or unverified, may have been dismissed early. Others suggest that decisions inside the palace often involve more than just facts. They involve judgment, timing, and the potential impact on public perception. But that's only part of the story. Because at the center of this situation is a personal relationship. The connection between Meghan and Prince Harry reportedly played a major role in how events moved forward. Insiders suggest that once that relationship became serious, the situation may have shifted from a purely procedural matter to something far more sensitive. And this is where things take a turn. Because when personal decisions intersect with institutional caution, the path forward is rarely simple. Reports indicate that senior figures may have faced a difficult balance, respecting personal choices while also protecting the image of the monarchy. What happened next raised even more questions. Some sources suggest that concerns, if they existed, may have been discussed quietly but not pursued aggressively. Others believe that there may have been confidence that any potential issues would not escalate publicly. But without clear records, these possibilities remain uncertain. And that uncertainty is exactly what is fueling the current debate. Because if internal discussions did take place, then the next question becomes critical. What conclusions were reached? Were concerns dismissed, managed, or simply set aside? Stay with us, because this changes everything. As the focus deepens, the story begins to shift once again. It is no longer just about what may have been known inside the palace, but about how information moves beyond it. Because if something was noticed internally, yet never surfaced publicly, then another layer of the story begins to emerge. And that leads directly to the next mystery. What role did the media play in all of this? As the story continues to expand, the focus shifts once again, this time toward the media. Not what was said, but what was not said. Because in high-profile situations like this, silence can be just as powerful as exposure. Reports suggest that during the early period of Meghan Markle entering the royal spotlight, many major media outlets showed unusual restraint. Stories were carefully framed. Certain topics were avoided. And some lines of inquiry, insiders believe, were never fully explored in public. That raises a difficult question. Was this silence a result of responsible journalism, or something more controlled? Sources indicate that coverage of the royal family often involves a delicate balance. Journalists rely on access, briefings, and long-standing relationships with palace communications teams. In return, there is sometimes an unspoken understanding. Handle sensitive topics with care, especially during critical moments. And this is where things begin to feel more complicated. Because at the time, the royal family was preparing for a major public event, the wedding of Meghan and Prince Harry. Reports suggest this period was seen as highly sensitive, with global attention focused on maintaining a positive narrative. But that's only part of the story. Some insiders believe that certain claims may have been known within media circles but were not pursued aggressively. Not necessarily because they were confirmed, but because they lacked solid evidence. In such cases, many organizations choose caution over risk. Yet others suggest a different possibility. That there may have been a quiet form of narrative management, not direct control, but a shared understanding of what should and should not be emphasized at certain times. Reports indicate that protecting institutional stability can sometimes influence editorial decisions, even indirectly. And this is where the tension grows. Because if information existed but was held back, even temporarily, then the public was only seeing part of the picture. And when that picture begins to change later, it creates a sense of mistrust. What happened next raised even more questions. As the allegations resurface now, observers are beginning to look back at that earlier silence in a new way. Every missed headline, every avoided topic, suddenly feels more significant. It raises the possibility that the story was always there, but not fully told. Stay with us, because the next detail is critical. Because the issue is no longer just about the past. It is about how that past was presented, and possibly shaped, before reaching the public. And this leads to a deeper concern. If narratives can be softened, delayed, or redirected, then how much of what the public sees is complete? And how much is carefully managed over time? This is where the story begins to move beyond individuals and towards something larger. Because now, the focus is not just on Meghan or the allegations themselves, but on the system surrounding them. And that system is about to face serious scrutiny. Because when questions about truth and control begin to overlap, the consequences can reach far beyond a single story. As the story deepens, the focus shifts once again, this time to the institution itself. The royal family has long been built on a carefully maintained image of stability, tradition, and unity. But when questions begin to surface about what may have been known, or possibly overlooked, that image can start to show signs of strain. Reports indicate that public trust in the monarchy depends heavily on consistency. People expect transparency, or at least a sense that major concerns are handled with care. But when uncertainty enters the picture, that trust can begin to weaken. And this is where the pressure begins to build. Sources suggest that the renewed attention around Meghan Markle is not happening in isolation. It comes at a time when the royal family is already navigating complex public narratives, particularly following the highly publicized decisions involving Prince Harry stepping back from royal duties. But that's only part of the story, because each new question adds another layer to an already delicate situation. Insiders believe that even unconfirmed allegations, when repeated and discussed widely, can influence how the public perceives the institution. It is not always about proof, it is about perception. And perception, in this case, is shifting. Some reports suggest that internal tensions may increase as different viewpoints emerge within the royal structure. While some may prioritize protecting tradition, others may focus on adapting to modern expectations of openness. This balance, insiders believe, is becoming harder to maintain. What happened next raised even more questions. Because the issue is no longer limited to past decisions. It is now about how those decisions are viewed today. If the public begins to believe that important matters were not handled transparently, it can create lasting doubt. And that doubt spreads quickly. Stay with us, because this changes everything. As scrutiny grows, the monarchy faces a new kind of challenge. Not just managing events, but managing perception in a world where information moves faster than ever. Every silence, every response, and every delay is now examined closely. And this is where things take a deeper turn. Because the longer questions remain unanswered, the more space there is for speculation to grow. Reports indicate that even small gaps in clarity can lead to larger narratives forming around them. This raises a critical point. Could this situation have been handled differently from the beginning? And if so, would the current scrutiny even exist? The story is no longer just about one person or one set of claims. It is about the strength of the institution itself, and how it responds when faced with uncertainty. And now, as attention continues to rise, one final phase of the story begins to take shape. What happens next may determine how this entire situation is remembered. As the situation continues to unfold, the focus shifts toward what lies ahead. The renewed attention around these allegations has created a wave of questions, but very few clear answers. And in cases like this, what happens next can often matter more than what has already happened. Reports suggest that, so far, there has been no direct or detailed public response addressing the specific claims. This silence, according to some observers, may be intentional. Institutions like the monarchy often rely on measured reactions, choosing carefully when, and if, to respond. But that approach comes with risks. Sources indicate that public pressure tends to grow when questions remain unanswered. The longer the silence continues, the more space is created for speculation. And speculation, once it spreads, can be difficult to contain. But that's only part of the story. Insiders believe there are several possible paths forward. One possibility is that the situation slowly fades, replaced by new headlines and shifting attention. Another is that continued discussion leads to deeper investigation, by media, authors, or independent voices. And this is where the uncertainty becomes critical. Because the direction of the story may depend not just on facts, but on momentum. If public interest continues to rise, it could push the issue into new territory. Reports indicate that in similar cases, Sustained attention has sometimes led to unexpected disclosures or clarifications. What happened next could change everything. There is also the question of how individuals connected to the story might respond. While Meghan Markle and Prince Harry have previously addressed broader media narratives, there is no clear indication of whether they will engage with these specific claims. And that silence adds another layer of tension. Stay with us, because the next detail is critical. Because beyond personal responses, the larger issue remains the credibility of the institution itself. How the royal family navigates this moment could shape public perception for years to come. Every decision matters. Every word, or lack of one, carries weight. And this is where the story reaches its most important question. Will this situation quietly disappear over time, as many controversies do? Or will it continue to grow, pulling more details into the light and forcing a deeper examination of what was known, and when? The answer is still unclear. But one thing is certain, the story is not fully over yet. And now, the final question remains. Do you think this will fade into silence, or is something bigger still waiting to be revealed?